You're gonna have to come up with it on the spot.
Oh, that's so hard because I'm already in my head about it.
Welcome to VCR, a Vintage Cinema Rewinds. We're bringing old movies to new viewers.
Yes, we are.
I'm Blake.
I'm Jason.
And this is part 2 of our Oscars 1959 series. We're watching North by Northwest.
A great Alfred Hitchcock film.
I thought you were just going to say a great Alfred movie. I was like, yeah, it's up there, definitely.
I think I like the Alfred that Michael Caine does. I think he's my favorite Michael Caine.
Michael Caine? All right, this is a weird tangent.
Yeah. He's not even in this.
Not even a little bit.
He could have been. He's pretty old.
I wonder what the first great Michael Caine movie is.
We should know this.
We should know this. I feel like I don't even know when the oldest Michael Caine movie I've ever watched is.
Wasn't he like a real suave? He was really suave back in the day.
I believe that.
There's a picture of him with his wife, and it's just like he is just a mean-looking motherfucker.
He's like the Cary Grant of
Britain.
Yes.
Yes.
Is Cary Grant British? I thought Cary Grant might be British.
I don't think so. If so, he's amazing.
I thought he was British. He is British. He's a British American actor. So
Okay.
I think he got his American whatever
Accent?
you want to call it. No, his American citizenship once he came to Hollywood.
Oh, okay. See, I thought he was just pure American, but slightly British, just based on his accent. Because he does have a bit of the transatlantic, but
That's actually what he's known for, is the transatlantic accent, which is really cool because you and I have been talking about that a little bit lately in some of our older movies.
It's just such a cool phenomenon that happened in movies. They just created their whole accent out of nowhere, basically.
Yeah, we're on a tangent and a half here. Do you want to start with the plot?
Yeah, let's get into it. North by Northwest is, again, another Alfred Hitchcock suspense film that takes us across the country as Roger Thornhill, played by Cary Grant, is mistaken for an American spy by foreign enemies. It's a fun parody of the more serious secret agent genre, and Roger, who is a wise ass of an ad man, gets kidnapped and simply won't cooperate without throwing a few quips in. He escapes his captors and goes on a cross-country adventure of love, intrigue, amazing quotes, and iconic locations.
Yeah, that's a great summary. One of my favorite parts of this movie is Cary Grant's demeanor throughout. He's just irritated and confused, and it's really fun. The whole movie is really fun that way.
Yeah, and you can tell at his ad firm, he's the most hilarious guy.
Yeah.
And he just wants to stay there in his own little world where he's the funny guy, and then he gets thrown into this whole situation where he's suspected of being a CIA agent.
Yeah.
And he's like, "No, I'm just an ad guy."
The guy gets kidnapped, and the whole time he's just like, "Guys, I have places to be."
Yeah. I have bartenders to tip.
Yeah. He's just so irritated. It kind of reminds me of the Suicide Squad, the most recent film, with Idris Elba's character, and that's something that people really lamented from that film is Idris Elba's demeanor of just kind of irritated and frustrated with everything going on all of the time. And that's what I felt like with this movie. Cary Grant's just God damn it. Why is this happening right now? Why can't I just be doing whatever I want to be doing right now?
Yeah. It's almost like if it was a comedy, he would be the straight man, but this is a serious movie, but he's still a comedic straight man.
Yeah. Yeah. That scene where he's at the train station trying to get his ticket. So when he has the sunglasses on, the ticket guy is something wrong with your eyes, and Cary Grant's yeah, they're sensitive to questions.
Yeah.
He's just irritated that this guy would ask him that.
Yeah, and he just throws them out so quickly and so suave, and he's just, his whole character is amazing.
One of my favorite portrayals in film.
Yeah. So overall, so he gets kidnapped, and then he is mistaken, he finds out, for a CIA agent
Right.
who is named George Kaplan,
Yeah.
who seems to be going to hotel rooms all over the country and traveling like quite fast, and his captors, who are like, this is like Cold War era, so they're trying to find American spies and find out what information they can get from them so that they could either sell it to the like enemies or take it back to their country, whatever.
Yeah.
They really think that this is George Kaplan, and he's just playing Roger Thornhill, even kind of complimenting on like how well he's playing Roger Thornhill. And they're like, you can drop at any time.
Yeah. That's actually a point that I was going to make later, that kind of almost struggling there to explain what the bad guys wanted a little bit.
Yeah.
And there's a purpose behind that Hitchcock wanted this to be almost a MacGuffin, which was popularized by Hitchcock, which is essentially the chase for some sort of object that really doesn't have a deep relationship to the plot necessarily.
Yeah. Like, we don't know why they want the information or what the information is. They're not even really discussing it. It's just about the interactions, and this thing is just kind of what's driving the plot forward without being meaningful.
Yeah, exactly. It just drives the plot forward. The whole movie is just about how Cary Grant deals with the situations that he's put in.
Yeah. And it's kind of like one of the first epic cross-country style movies, cross-country epics.
Yeah.
Where we follow one character all the way across the country. And so that was super exciting, I think, for the audience goers at the time.
Well, yeah, and we see so many really cool locations as well. Like, all of the locations where they filmed were, for the most part, on location.
Yeah.
And there's a couple little interesting details I want to talk about a little bit later into that when we dive into things. But that's also a really neat thing to see all of these big landmarks, and maybe if you live around those landmarks as well, how they've changed over the years too, because you and I are a little bit more removed from the US, but still
just a little north, I guess.
Oh geez, eh? That's kind of a Minnesota accent, actually, though.
So after he gets kidnapped, he is forced to drink a bottle of bourbon.
Yeah.
And they just force down like a whole bottle of bourbon and then put him behind the wheel of a car.
To try to kill him.
Yeah, to try and kill him. He's supposed to drive off a cliff. They were supposed to like start the gas, and he was just supposed to go off. But then he's kind of waking up in a blur. No, what's funny? In that moment, he's actually saying a few quotes from the movie that he was supposed to go see with his mom earlier.
Oh, no way.
Well, in his drunken state, you can't super understand him, but he's saying a few quotes from the movie, something like the West Side Story, I think, it was what he was supposed to go see with his mom. He gets in the car and he kind of mumbles, "I've grown accustomed to your bourbon." Then they start the car and he's supposed to go off the cliff, but he starts driving the car, so he does escape, but then eventually gets pulled over by the police. They, of course, don't believe his whole story about like these guys trying to murder him, basically.
Yeah. I'm not condoning drunk driving, and neither is this movie, but it's the greatest drunk driving of all time.
Oh, yeah. Like, his acting in that was just phenomenal. Like, he wasn't really driving on roads or anything, but, like, the way he was acting and, like, falling asleep a little bit and, like, swerving, missing stuff, just phenomenal. He's just so in character.
And even the scene where he's like hammered at the police station afterwards is, again, just like very in character of him, just kind of being irritated but being too drunk to even explain it.
Yeah. Like, they give him his phone call and like he won't dial the number, and he won't like put the receiver back down. Like, he's just really drunk and plays that so well. And like, he calls his mom and they're like, "You better make a good use of your one phone call," and he calls his mom to say he couldn't make it to the movie or something. Yeah,
he just kind of rambles on for a little bit. I'd score this movie as a film about mistaken identity. It's probably one of the greatest mistaken identity films.
Alfred Hitchcock was just so ahead on like creating all these things.
He had so many ideas. Like, he must be one of the most creative directors of all time.
Yeah, and we get to see him in this movie. Which was super fun at the beginning, right at the beginning.
Yeah, you caught him right at the beginning, right? Yeah, I caught him too. I was like, oh, there he goes, Jess.
Yeah. He was trying to get onto a bus, but the bus closed because he was slightly too late.
Yeah.
And that's all we see of him, yeah.
Yeah, apparently he makes cameos in most of his films.
Yeah, I've seen a clip of like a few of his like main cameos.
Yeah, he's like the Stan Lee of the 50s and 60s.
He started it.
Yeah,
probably,
yeah.
And so this is also one of like the first parodies of like a style of movie that he's done. It was a self-parody almost. Like
this movie has like a really interesting connection because it's like you said, it's kind of a parody. But then a lot of the ideas and the way that the film is framed is then used later in other like spy thrillers and stuff like that. So let's save some of this to legacy because I want to get into spoiler talk a little bit there.
Yeah, for sure.
So let's talk characters and people you may know. So our first character that we've already talked about a little bit here, or quite a bit actually, is Roger Thornhill, the ad exec. So when the movie started, I had really deep Mad Men vibes from this. And I was like, oh, Jess, like this is going to kind of be like watching Mad Men, but like in real time.
Yeah.
Very different direction from Mad Men, but it's kind of cool to see that timing and that comparison in the clothes that they wore. As somebody who's a massive fan of the TV show Mad Men, I really appreciated that.
Yeah. So the very first intro scene we see with Roger Thornhill is him speaking with his secretary about like things he needs her to do. One of them is like to message his some kind of lover. He is like, oh, like write this to her, and then she's like, you wrote that to her last week, and he's like, oh, okay, maybe get her some candy and write something for your sweet tooth, baby. And all your other sweet parts. Like he's like that smooth, sexual, suave, like guy. He's just like at the top of his game, like top of the world.
He's been married and divorced twice.
Yeah.
What's really great about Roger Thornhill and the trajectory of the film is that he's taken within like the first 5 minutes of the film. Like there's no like kind of, building the character really a whole lot. Like
I think they built it so well in just a few lines that they were able to get right to the plot quickly. And that it drew us in probably very quickly, but also just audiences at the time.
Yeah. I gotta say, I was not expecting him to be kidnapped so early, and I wasn't expecting like just the pacing of the film is really good throughout. Like you're always just interested in what's gonna happen next.
Yeah.
So
for anyone who hasn't watched it yet, it is a longer movie, but the pacing.
See, this for me, I thought the pace, like the length, was actually pretty good. It's 2 hours and 16 minutes. I think it's way more accessible than Ben-Hur.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, for sure. But for the average person who hasn't watched or delved too far into older movies, it is a little long. And that's where like my partner's scale is off a little bit this week, where it was a little too long. But the interactions just drew me in so much that you don't really notice the time.
See, and I'm going to disagree with you a little bit because you look at like the Avengers movies and other films that have been in the last 10 years and they're pushing 3 hours again. They're starting to get back up there. So I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. And with how crisp the pacing is throughout this film, I was never bored. I was never like losing focus on this. And even Jess was 100% tuned in. This is the most tuned in out of any movie that we've watched on the podcast that she's been.
It's probably just because of Cary Grant.
Yeah, she's actually already watched Cary Grant films as well.
Yeah,
so
okay,
we're already kind of alluding to this. Roger Thornhill is played by Cary Grant. So Jess had already seen Cary Grant in Charade with Audrey Hepburn, and also An Affair to Remember.
Okay, yeah.
But other films that... Oh, man. I'm getting the names mixed up now because we've got Roger Thornhill, George Kaplan, and Cary Grant, the actor.
Yeah.
So Cary Grant was actually also starred in To Catch a Thief with Grace Kelly.
He was huge at the time.
Yes. This is almost... this is the peak of Cary Grant. but he actually retired in the 60s, so only a few years after this. He was about 56 during this film. So he's even a bit older than maybe what they wanted for the role, but he's just such a good actor that I can't picture anyone else at that time.
They actually turned down someone else because they were too old looking, and then went with Cary Grant, who is 4 years older than the other guy.
Yeah, that's how suave Cary Grant is. So our next character that we should talk about is Eve Kendall, the mysterious woman that Cary Grant meets on the train while he's trying to evade the police. And that comes, about 30, 40 minutes into the film?
Yeah.
She's played by Eva Marie Saint, who's actually still alive, 97 years old. And she's actually one of the last remaining actors from the golden
generation.
Yeah, from the golden era of film.
Wow.
Which is really cool.
She was Superman's mom.
Yes!
In Superman Returns.
And I distinctly remember her too.
Yeah.
And that's not like a good movie by any means.
No.
But I do remember her. Her first film, and what a high. Her first film ever was On the Waterfront alongside Marlon Brando.
Yeah.
And in her first role, she won the Oscar for supporting role.
Yeah, just absolutely amazing. Just like she hit a few just huge movies, and she deserved it. She was such a good actor in this, and
she was just as electric as Cary Grant was.
Yeah, and they meshed very well.
Yeah, yes they did.
The on-screen chemistry was there.
Her character is so intriguing because when we meet her, she's just instantly like attracted and also helping Cary Grant out.
Yeah.
And I will say that, like you were saying, their chemistry is so great. Like when they're sitting there on the train and having that kind of back and forth, that's all those like sexual innuendos. I think if you had different actors in that role, then it would have come off as like
flat or corny or something like that.
Yeah.
But they acted the shit out of that, and it felt real.
Yeah, it did feel real.
And like as soon as I saw her, I was like, oh, she's like my type. She was smoking. She was like hilarious.
Yeah.
And just she kept up with Cary Grant's character the whole time. And it was great.
Let's not go any further into her character quite yet, because there's some really interesting stuff around her character that I don't want to spoil.
Yeah.
Philip Van Damme is our nondescript, extremely wealthy villain throughout the film. He has such a familiar looking face. I don't know if, like, I actually couldn't find other films that I've seen of him, but I just, like, I don't know. Before watching this movie, I was like, if you had a line of people in a row, I'd be like, that's the guy, that's the bad guy.
Yeah, 100%.
He just has that face. So he's the guy who's looking to extract information from Kaplan, who's constantly chasing Kaplan around, trying to...
And he's doing it in such a smart way.
Yes.
The way he captures Kaplan and brings him to this grand estate that he is temporarily using, we find out later.
Yeah.
Like that whole scenario, Van Damme thinks that Thornhill is doing the exact same thing by being George Kaplan.
Yeah.
So, but he's doing that stuff, so it's so much more believable that George Kaplan is just playing Roger Thornhill right now, and that he set up this whole elaborate scheme.
Yes.
So that's why he won't believe that Roger Thornhill isn't just Roger Thornhill.
That's such a good line of thought that I didn't think about before. I didn't put that together, that he's almost projecting outwards.
Yeah, his elaborate scheme is so elaborate that he believes that so that makes so much sense for why there's this mistaken identity.
Yeah. And what a great first twist too. In a movie full of twists, when you realize that the house that they were using wasn't actually his, and was someone else's, like some other wealthy person's house.
He was acting as if he was a UN member.
Yeah.
And that was the UN member's house.
Yeah.
And when he was in that house, he looked like it was his house. Like he acted like it was his house.
Yeah.
It's just so great.
And don't worry, like, that's not even close to the top of good spoilers in the film, or good twists.
Yeah.
There's so many twists that I couldn't even list them all, I don't think.
This was just a respectable small detail that was just so essential in building these characters.
But it makes it, like,
building
when it
Van Damme,
happens,
like Van Damme had to have this whole thing at the beginning so that we really understood how good he is, like how good he is at being bad.
Yeah. So I want to talk about James Mason, the actor, a little bit first. He has just a number of famous films that he starred in. And also the directors that he starred in with films is kind of incredible. Let's look at the list here on Wikipedia really quick, because I think Wikipedia actually summarizes it extremely well. He was in A Star is Born, which just had a very recent remake, which was extremely popular and I believe even won some Oscars. He was in Alfred Hitchcock's North by Northwest, what we're talking about now. Following that, he went to Stanley Kubrick in Lolita.
Yeah, which is a massive cult classic.
Yep. He was in Warren Beatty's Heaven Can Wait, which is also very famous comedy that was nominated for some Oscars as well.
So he's got some range.
He's got some range. And he was in The Verdict with one of our new favorites, Paul Newman.
It's all connected.
It's all connected. He actually won, I believe he at least was nominated for or won an Oscar for his supporting role in The Verdict. I believe he won it. So
awesome.
So really cool.
So for this time, this was a star-studded cast.
Oh,
really.
yeah.
Like, they were all at the top of their games, and they were all working in all these amazing movies with these amazing directors, and they were all so highly respected that this is rated one of the top 50 or 100. I know it's in the 100. Mm-hmm. It might even have been at one point in the top 50 best movies of all time.
Yeah. It's like that movie Red Notice on Netflix with Ryan Reynolds, The Rock, and what's her name? She was in Batman vs. Superman. But it's actually a good movie, unlike that movie. And honestly, if you wanted to watch something like Red Notice, you're probably just better off watching North by Northwest, because it's kind of that similar spy suspense intrigue film.
Gal Gadot, yeah.
Gal Gadot, yes.
Yeah, so that's new, but yeah.
Yeah, but it's think about it. It's like that level of charisma in a film that's actually good.
Yeah, yes, exactly.
That's the point I'm trying to make.
yeah. Like, this is I would say it's, I don't know, Burn After Reading.
I haven't seen that.
Oh, you should definitely watch that, because it's star-studded and it's humorous and serious at the same time. It's very similar to this. I wouldn't have drawn that comparison until you said Red Notice. But Burn After Reading, that's Brad Pitt and a bunch of other amazing actors, and it's hilarious, and that's a phenomenal movie.
Right. Only other point that I'm going to end on with James Mason is that he was close friends with Charlie Chaplin, and his ashes were actually spread around Charlie Chaplin's grave site. That's how close of friends they were.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's always really interesting watching these older films, because these are they're almost at the crossroads between old films and new films. These are getting into the Technicolor. I love when they say Technicolor on the intro of these films.
Yeah, it's always advertised you have it's Technicolor, it's gonna be amazing.
Yeah,
and they use it well. All the scenery is phenomenal in this, so
yeah. So Charlie Chaplin is the greatest of the silent film era, and then we've got this film, which is almost at that crossroads, and then we get into the 70s, and then we get into modern movies, basically. That interesting connection there. And there's a few other actors in this film too that are born in the 1800s, so which is wild. Hitchcock, I believe himself was born in 1897 or something crazy.
Yeah.
But anyway, I only have one other actor that I really want to mention really quick, is the Professor, played by Leo G. Carroll.
That's what I was going to bring up. Yeah.
Yeah, he was the head of Uncle in the show The Man from Uncle. Yeah. So definitely typecast into a role after this film.
Yeah, and he had a bunch of roles that were very similar. That's where I was gonna go with that.
Yeah. He's the leader of the CIA in the film, or the FBI. I can't remember which.
He says I'm a part of all of the three-letter.
We all work together.
Yeah. Oh no, he says we're all part of the same alphabet soup.
Yes,
which
is a great line.
That's his famous line. Yeah.
Yeah. So before we move on, let's talk Hitchcock a little bit. This isn't his first. This isn't his second highest rated film. This is his fourth highest
Yeah.
rated film, behind Psycho, Rear Window, and Vertigo, which in and of itself kind of blows my mind that it's the fourth highest, because this movie is so good that I can't even imagine how great the other ones are.
I know. And I've been meaning to get more into the like all of the Hitchcock films.
Mm-hmm.
It's on everyone's list.
Yeah.
And each of his movies, like Psycho, is high up that list. I just haven't got to it for no reason.
Yeah.
But now that we're getting more and more into these, I want to delve like full on in.
Yeah, and I actually did watch Vertigo maybe a month or two ago now, and I didn't love it. I didn't hate it. Maybe I wasn't in the right headspace going into it, and it was a bit slower. It's kind of a romantic film. It was good, but I think North by Northwest beats it by a mile in terms of entertainment.
Yeah, and just talking about that like comparison, there is romance in this. Mm-hmm. And the romance, again, like we've watched a few old movies now, and like in this era, I should say, and the love, how it happens, how it's portrayed on scene is so characteristic to that time. And it's funny to me when I'm watching, like how he just like, it's like a snap of the face. It's like love at first sight every time.
Yeah.
There's some good like back and forth in it, but like just the concept of love at that time was so strange.
Yeah, and I can agree with that. I think we could also talk quickly about Hitchcock, and the way he portrays women in film is really interesting. And I think this is your first Hitchcock.
Yeah, it is.
So I watched Vertigo, and then I watched this, and even after two films, I kind of picked up on it. I was like, there's something here about the way he's portraying women, and I think he's probably one of the first people to ever portray women in a really complex way.
Yeah.
Like, they're not necessarily like good love interest, they're not necessarily all bad, like they've got different, they're like ogres with onions.
There's layers to them. Yeah, okay.
They have layers.
But they're usually all not ogre looking. I don't think that's where you're going with that.
Looking,
no, but I would have to watch a few other, like I have seen some older movies in before and around this time where the women weren't as well rounded as in this movie. Eve balanced Roger so well. Like they played with each other in like a back and forth way that was very respectable, I think, because he respected her, like everything that she said, kind of.
Right, but it's even the complexity though of like her character and her character's arc that, for spoiler reasons, I don't want to talk further than that. But on the flip side, you've got his mom, who's like completely, just shooting him down the whole time, like. And
you could almost see exactly why he's so funny, because his mom is so funny too.
Yeah.
And that's kind of exactly what I'm saying, because like his humor, his character is the central, like is part of his central character theme, I guess. And every woman in the film is hilarious.
Yeah.
So it's awesome to see that like it balances, like it's not just like the guy being the funny guy.
Yeah, or even necessarily like the main hero of the story. Like obviously he's the hero of the story, but he just kind of like bumbles his way through it.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like,
while she is like a professional, and his mom is just hilarious. Yeah.
So Hitchcock, other just little things that I wanted to mention. He's really known for his suspense and his twists.
There are so many things that Hitchcock started and influenced, and other people played with and built upon to great success later in film.
Yeah.
He started a lot of things that made all of the movies that you enjoy today good.
And just how prolific he was too at the time. He directed 50 films in just over 60 years. So that's almost a movie a year for 60 years. That's wild.
Yeah, and to keep going that long, I feel like that must be a record for the longest director, and like I can't say that for sure, but
it's definitely up there. I think the only ones that you have maybe are that crazy dude who like knows karate.
Steven Seagal?
Yeah, you know how many movies he's directed? It's ridiculous.
Yeah,
it's almost as many as Bruce Willis has been in.
Yeah,
in the last like 10 years.
Is there a correlation there? Are they all in the same? I'm just kidding, but that, sure, someone's been in it just as long, but to be in it and Alfred Hitchcock,
Yeah,
like top,
actually
top,
good.
yeah, top director, not just a B, C. Like Steven Seagal's like a D list
Yeah.
movie. Like it's not
If
even
that.
it's not even straight to VHS. It's still straight to VHS while we have Blu-ray and
2021.
streaming. Yeah,
Or 2022. I don't
Yeah.
even know what year it is anymore.
yeah.
Yeah, so Hitchcock, he was known as the master of suspense.
Yeah, yeah. To have that suspense built into such a funny, enjoyable movie was amazing because he was known so much for just like the scary suspense
Yeah.
where you're worried throughout the whole thing. You're like,
Yeah.
what's going to happen next? But in this, you're like I can't wait to see what's going to happen next. I'm so super excited for it. There's suspense built there, but I know it's going to be awesome.
It's that tension back and forth
Yeah.
between the comedy and the actual suspense and what's going on in the film it walks a really fine line
Yeah.
that often other films maybe push one way too much in one direction or the other.
Yeah.
There is actually one more person important to the film that I do want to talk about, and that's Ernest Lehman. He wrote the screenplay for the film.
Yeah.
So I believe this is actually based on a book. But no, it wasn't. Can you look that up really quick? But Ernest Lehman was actually. I'm gonna list this out to you. He wrote the screenplays for The King and I, West Side Story, which is funny that that's referenced in the film, and The Sound of Music. So he's kind of a prolific like musical writer.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Huh.
But he wanted to make the most Hitchcock of Hitchcock films of all time, and I gotta say, I think he succeeded.
Yes, he did. And yeah, like that's what he set out to do. The way this movie came about, Alfred Hitchcock was supposed to do a film for MGM. They had a budget and everything. They were supposed to do it on the novel The Wreck of Mary Dear. Who cares about that, because it didn't turn into this.
Right.
He sat down with Lehman, who's like, I have something for you. And like they just had to work together. And Alfred Hitchcock was like, I want something where there's a like mistaken identity with kidnapping and
Oh yeah,
what's the four heads of the United States thing?
Mount Rushmore.
Yeah, Mount Rushmore.
He also had a fourth thing in it that didn't make it into the movie as well. There was something big and crazy that they wanted to do too.
They just came together as two people that wanted to work together and build something, and they had like three like main ideas, and they just ran with it. And Lehman just knocked it out of the park for Alfred to actually also knock it out of the park.
Yeah, actually, this is what they wanted, and Lehman was like, there's no way we could do this. But Hitchcock wanted the hero to be stranded, like in the middle of nowhere, like we see in the film.
Yeah.
But he wanted the villains to try to kill him with a tornado. And Lehman was like, how
Do we just wait for a tornado?
like, how are they going to do that?
Yeah.
Like, how are we going to film that?
Yeah.
No. But that turns into one of the most iconic scenes in cinema ever, and one of my favorite scenes in cinema ever.
Wizard of Oz?
No, in this film.
Oh, okay.
I don't want to talk about it.
I'm just kidding. I'm kidding.
I don't want to talk about that scene anymore because
it's coming.
It's so good. It's so good. It reminds me of so much. Like, I'm probably gonna see the comparisons of what happened in that scene to like other stuff that I watched throughout the rest of my life. I think because it's such a great tense scene. But I can't talk about it yet because I don't want to ruin it for you if you haven't seen this movie yet. All right, well, let's do who is this movie for? Obviously, if you're a Hitchcock fan, like, I don't know why you haven't seen this yet.
Yeah. If you have the idea that you want to watch an Alfred Hitchcock movie, then you should watch. I would say start with this. It's
a gateway.
It's definitely a phenomenal start to getting into Hitchcock.
I agree. I think this was a much better accessible watch than Vertigo was. And so if you're a fan of him, if you're a fan of suspense, if you're a fan of spy or espionage type films.
Or parody films of those genres.
Yeah. Yep.
Like, what was it? The one with Steve Carell? Get Smart or
yes,
something.
Get Smart.
Yeah, Get Smart.
Which in itself is based on a TV show, which came out, I believe, in the 60s, following this film.
Yeah.
Which probably has its roots in something
Exactly.
like this as well.
Yeah. So he's basically trying to be like George Kaplan, but also James Bond. So it's a whole parody of that. Like it's almost its own genre.
Yep.
And so if you're a fan of like funny spy things, like there's a new one out called MacGruber, which would be a good comparison, I think.
Yeah, I was reading for some of the legacy, and MacGruber does come up, so as kind of a more recent spin on this. Yeah, homage, spin, whatever. Those are the big ones that I have. Again, Idris Elba's character in the Suicide Squad, if you liked that portrayal, I think you're going to like Cary Grant's portrayal as well. I didn't have too much else I wanted to say for who this movie is for, though. I think general audiences would enjoy this film.
So what I would just like, it's a popcorn film.
Yes.
Like grab some popcorn and enjoy it. There's not anything super serious being talked about. There's not anything to shatter your mind and like go into something deep.
Yeah.
But
you could walk away for like 5 minutes or even get into this movie somewhere, 10, 15 minutes in and still be hooked, I think.
Yeah. It's just enjoyable. So enjoyable. So when to watch would be Friday, Saturday night. You know what? I would say Friday night.
I said Friday night as well.
Yes, nice.
I think there's a distinction between what I want to watch on a Friday night and what I want to watch on a Saturday night.
Yeah, because Friday night you are done with the week and you want to enjoy something.
Yes.
Whereas Saturday night you have a bit more energy and you might be like, let's go into something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I very much agree with that. That's the exact take that I had. We're actually recording this on a Friday because we're a little bit late. And I kind of, now that we say that, want to rewatch it tonight. But
oh, there's so many movies to watch, though.
Yeah, but this one's good. I can't wait to watch this again.
Yeah.
So the other thing is like it's such, again, and I've already said this before, but the 200 hours and 16 minutes is so crisp. It's never plotting. Like it's always moving at a good enough pace that, even if you're a little tired on that Friday night, you're going to be okay with it.
Yeah, and honestly, almost every single one of the lines that Cary Grant says is so entertaining.
Yeah.
It just keeps everything moving forward. You just want to hear more of what he has to say.
Yeah.
And how the other characters react to it, because the other characters have great lines in response or that lead to him saying something hilarious. So, yeah, I would say like the dialogue is almost what keeps everything going.
You know what that reminds me of, actually, is the movie Fletch from the 80s with Chevy Chase.
Chevy Chase would be a good... Yeah, I could see that.
So he basically, everybody plays an extremely straight character, and he's a wise ass throughout the entire film.
Yeah.
And it's a spy movie as well. I bet you that is very much rooted in this film,
100%, yeah. Because, Chevy Chase, he's so... funny, like almost every line you're hooked on it, and that's where you see Cary Grant shine in this comedic role, because he had a lot of serious roles too over his career, but that comparison I think works well. And if I don't know, the last time I've seen Chevy Chase was in Hot Tub Time Machine, I think, and he had the best lines in that.
Yeah, movie wise, probably. I think of him in Community.
Yes. Yeah, that's more recent.
Yeah, he's slightly different character there.
But I mean, all of his shit's funny.
Oh yeah, he's hilarious.
Yeah.
Where to watch? Right now, you can watch it streaming on Crave Stars or Amazon Stars. I don't have access to either, so what I did was this time I actually tried renting it on YouTube just to see what the experience was like renting a movie on YouTube. Visually and audio-wise, it was great streaming it through the TV. It was a little bit frustrating initially to kind of set it up and pay for it, but once we got that on the smart TV, then it worked really well after that. So
nice. I was looking into trying to rent one of our previous movies on YouTube, and I was just so tired, and there was 2 more clicks and I would have got there, but I couldn't do it. So that's good. Once you get it there, it's decent.
Yeah, it's not too bad. Honestly, I think that if you're gonna rent it from somewhere, I do think that I prefer the Amazon interface, even though the Amazon Prime interface is garbage.
Oh yeah.
It's not bad renting, I find.
Yeah.
But yeah, YouTube was a little frustrating setup, but once all good, it was a good viewing experience.
Nice.
I think at this point it's a good spot to cut it off. We've done as spoiler free as possible up until this point for a movie that came out in 1959.
Yeah.
So if you haven't seen this yet, I again can't recommend this one enough either because it was amazing.
It seems like we're cherry picking only really great movies, and that makes it sound like we just love all movies.
Yeah.
Which we kind of do, but these are just great movies.
Yeah. I mean, we did watch Soylent Green, which you and I weren't like
we didn't
super high on.
Yeah.
But we're talking about a podcast about great old movies, trying to get people in the old movies. Yeah. So I feel like we're doing the right thing, talking the movies that we want to talk about. But
it's not like we're gonna pick all the worst and just make a whole podcast about that, right?
Yeah, there's already podcasts for that for old bad movies.
That's true.
So we're doing our own thing.
There's this one podcast where a guy watches a single movie every like month for a year and just like goes over it and over it and over it and like starts to pick out like, you know what, this scene I hated the first 20 times, but now I kind of get it. Spoiler free is over.
Yeah, we're talking spoilers all the time now.
Free spoilers
for your car
from the rest of the podcast on.
Yeah.
We go spoiler free and then we go free spoilers.
Yeah, we free the spoiler.
Yes.
Or hashtag free the spoiler. This is so dumb.
Yeah.
Let's talk themes.
All right.
So what's really interesting about this movie is that Hitchcock wanted to film with the absence of themes. He just essentially was looking for a really good story, a good plot.
Yeah.
And what that kind of turns into is kind of a good suspense action flick from start to finish.
Yeah.
And I think that this is the precursor. This has the DNA of a lot of modern movies where it doesn't have those themes necessarily, but it's just like that, the trajectory of the plot and the action that the characters are on.
Yeah. Yeah. I see that because it's almost reverse to his other movies where like theme, from what I've read, is very essential. And just overall, a lot of themes like pre-2000s were theme heavy. A lot of great movies were theme heavy. But now we are kind of seeing things where it's like a lack of that substance.
Yeah.
That people are just watching a movie to enjoy. And that is completely fair. But he was already thinking about that way back in 1959. Yeah. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it is cool. But, there are obviously some themes within the film that are just naturally developed. Like the idea of mistaken identity.
Yeah.
That is what drives the film, essentially.
Yeah, it's not a huge theme. It's not like love conquers evil or anything like that. It's just like this is it. Like it's a very small theme.
Yeah.
Done well.
Yeah, exactly. And there's also the idea of the Cold War as the backdrop of the film.
Yeah.
Because that plays a bit of a part as well in the tensions between the good and evil characters. But otherwise, there really isn't much else to talk about for themes.
Yeah, like the love part, it's there, but it's just like comedic and it's a little intense. It's their kissing is not very sexual. They were kissing. They were just pressing their mouths together. So you can't say that's a theme.
I love how you're rating their kisses. Can we make that a segment? Like,
yeah.
Just rating kisses in movies.
Honestly, their kisses were like a 4. Like it was like when I like you ever go see like your cousins and they have kids and you see their kids who are like 3 years old kiss their mother, and it's like they don't understand what a kiss is. They're just pressing their mouth against someone else. That's exactly what the kisses looked like, but they acted it up, but they didn't do anything.
I don't think every film needs tongue in it, though. You know what?
I kind of wish there was in this, just because it looked like they were just smashing faces without doing anything.
You know what all right, So this is a whole side tangent here, but I'm really enjoying this.
All right.
What's a 10 in your mind for kisses? Because I've got it in my head already.
Ooh.
What's the greatest kiss of kisses? Because like I said, I've already figured it out.
In film, I'm assuming
Yep,
we're
in
talking
film.
about, not
Talking
in my
film.
life, because that gets a little... I can't talk about that.
Or it's sad.
I don't have one off the top of my
All right,
head.
you ready for mine?
Yeah.
All right. It's obviously The Princess Bride. Because there was...
Yeah.
You remember the quote where he's like, there was the greatest 5 kisses to ever happen in the history of humankind, and this one blew them all out of the water.
Yeah.
Like...
Yeah. Was it the best on film? I don't know, but it was like, I see the connection. That was pretty funny. I see that.
Yeah.
Um,
That's such a great movie. I can't wait until we do that one because I'm gonna be hyped the whole time. Like,
Yeah,
you guys
yeah.
think I'm riding a high right now? Wait till you listen to me talk about The Princess Bride.
Yeah. Oh, such a good movie.
Yeah. All right, let's move on from this really random tangent that we got a new weird segment out of. Let's talk some effects and filming. So, do you want to start with the locations?
Just to go back,
Okay.
the Spider-Man kiss is one of the top 10.
Oh, when he's upside down.
Yeah.
You
but
can't see what I'm doing right now.
Yeah. He's doing like a weird, like his fingers in front of his face, just like tickling each other. Yeah. Rose and Jack.
Yep.
Han and Leia. Honestly,
I still think Buttercup and the Dread Pirate Roberts. Effects and filming. So, locations. So, a lot of the locations are filmed on the location of the famous set. Like, they filmed that on Rushmore. And something that Hitchcock really wanted to get, for whatever reason, he was really fixated on this, was to get Cary Grant inside of Lincoln's nose sneezing.
Yeah.
And the people who, I guess the rangers or whatever,
Who maintain the park, the
yeah.
people in charge of the park.
Yeah, were eventually just like, you know what? They were like, how would you like it if Lincoln was sneezing in Cary Grant's nose? And it was like, all right. fair enough, like-
Yeah, so that's a funny thing that happened with the effects and filming. I think it would have been I think it would have kind of worked in the film, but it would have been a little bit too forced.
Mhm.
But I could see like they might have, if anyone could have pulled it off, it was Cary Grant and
Yes, it is.
Alfred Hitchcock running that whole thing together. Yeah.
Yeah, so a lot of these locations are, in fact, the famous locations. The one that's really interesting that I did want to talk about was the UN building.
Yeah.
They secretly filmed the exterior of that because they didn't get the rights to it.
No, it was the interior.
No, the interior was made up. The exterior. So
No. Here's how it happened. So they weren't allowed to film anything about it.
Yeah.
So they had a hidden camera go inside, film everything, and then they were able to then recreate the set after,
Right. But
based on the film that they had basically snuck in and stole.
Right. But the only thing with where is it now? One sec. So yeah, they did film the exterior of it secretly. They basically had Cary Grant pull up in a taxi right outside of it and then walk into or across the plaza.
Yeah.
And somebody actually like recognized Cary Grant as he was walking. So if you're watching really closely, you can actually see somebody like do a double take as Cary Grant.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesing.
Which is funny because it
Yeah.
also kind of works into the movie too, right? Because
Yeah.
at this point in time, Cary Grant's like a wanted man.
Yeah.
So it doesn't stand out, but it does stand out.
Yeah. Oh, awesome. One of the main things for me was just through my interest in film. I had watched like years ago a clip probably on YouTube of like random scenes where someone in the scene broke the fourth wall, and one of them is the classic scene in North by Northwest where Cary Grant gets shot by Eve in the character, with a gun that had blanks in it.
Right.
And so in that scene, if you're watching it, there's a little kid in there who, like, everyone's acting this scene out, but he knows that this loud bang is going to happen from this gun. So he preemptively closes his ears with his fingers right before the shot goes off. So that's another little effects in filming like blooper that's one of the classics.
Did you notice that too beforehand, or did you just know it because of the watching that on YouTube, like as a goof kind of thing?
So I watched it on YouTube as a goof a long time ago, and then I watched the scene. I didn't catch it this time. So that's one where I dropped the ball. I usually catch a bunch of stuff like that, but I just saw that on research. And then I was like, oh my God, I remember that. So that's like one of the like classic scenes, especially for back then, of like it was almost breaking the fourth wall, like just someone who it was just a kid you didn't know.
Yeah. All right, I want to talk Cary Grant a little bit in effects and filming. So he had no idea throughout the movie what the movie was about, and he thought it was kind of a disaster. Like he was just like,
no way,
this movie's awful. I'm not happy with it. Like I don't get it. Like, and so Hitchcock was even more happy with how things were going because of Cary Grant's. I keep saying Hugh Grant, but because of Cary Grant's just like general demeanor of like what the hell's happening, because
that's his character. Yeah.
So he thought it made the portrayal more realistic. Which is great.
Yeah,
because
that's amazing.
Probably did.
Yeah, 100%. Because he was probably just as snappy like as Cary Grant is as Thornhill was, and so his lines just came off that way perfectly. Yeah.
Cary Grant's suit is one of the most iconic suits in all of film. The impact that it had on clothing design was very important for the 60s. In addition, that suit has actually been used in films subsequently. So Tom Cruise used it.
No way.
And Ben Affleck have used it before.
Affleck.
I don't know how I said it, but it was wrong. I heard it.
Ben
and
Affleck.
I said it.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, so it was something random that I was just reading about, but I was like, that's kind of neat.
One thing that is kind of effects in filming, but it's almost more in the movie, is just how cool of an idea it was that these CIA agents, so they created the character George Kaplan as a ruse as a cover for one of their actual agents, so that this George Kaplan had multiple hotels around the country that like he was moving towards, and a whole schedule and everything. And the foreign spies figured it out, and they're like, oh, he's gonna be there. And then every single hotel room, like they created this elaborate identity where someone would call the reception from his phone in his hotel room and say, oh, I need my suit cleaned, and or like I'm gonna check out at this time, or forward this mail for me. So that was just like a really cool concept.
Yeah, I agree.
I feel like hadn't happened before, and I don't know if I've seen someone do that since, really.
No, because I wasn't expecting it. I was really confused by it.
Yeah.
Because often in older movies, you almost feel the twist coming because they've just been parodied so often.
Yeah.
But yeah, that one was intriguing. I was like, what's going on?
Yeah,
with this?
like the whole this agent actually doesn't exist thing. I don't know if it had happened before, but they played it off so well. And they made it sound like so believable.
And that scene as well, where we get all the different CIA members, like the leaders, and they're all talking.
Yeah.
And like that moment is just like, oh man, like that's crazy.
Yeah,
like I did not see that coming. Where George Kaplan is just a made up character. As a ruse too.
Yeah. Like, and then we see them discussing, so this Roger Thornhill just fell into becoming our George Kaplan, and the enemy thinks he's that guy that we created out of thin air. We have to leave this. We have to let him, we have to let it run its course. And that kind of sets that idea in, the public, the audience's mind, okay, the CIA really is doing all this crazy shit.
Yeah, it's just written very well.
Yeah.
And the ideas are very unique and even hard to copy in other films.
Yeah.
The plane scene.
Yeah.
So
we had to get to that.
Yeah. So
this is like the chariot scene from Ben-Hur.
I agree. And that's what's on the poster is Cary Grant running away from the plane.
Yeah.
This is one of the most tense scenes in all of film, where you really don't know what's going to happen, because whatever's going to happen, it's not going to be good. He's agreed to meet up with a CIA member, but that who he's agreed to meet up with is not the CIA, it's actually the bad guys. So he's like suspicious. There's trucks just blasting by him, kind of thing. Like somebody could take him out at any moment.
Yeah.
You get this car come out of like the cornfield just slowly, and you're like,
yeah.
oh, like,
that must be George Kaplan
Yeah.
or whoever's gonna grab him now.
Yeah. And all the while, there's the little plane. What's it called? Where it's the crop dusting plane.
Yeah.
Is in the background. He's kind of watching it. It's in the background. It's in the foreground the whole time.
And then the guy who steps out of that car that comes out of the field.
And they have that tense moment where he's like, "Are you who I think you are?"
Yeah.
And the guy's like, "Well, I don't think so." But like you don't know if he's actually being honest or not.
Yeah. But the guy does come off as like, I didn't think it was him either. Like as soon as they started talking, I had the quote.
He's like, that's strange, because they're waiting for the bus. He's like, I'm just waiting for the bus to get into town. He's like, that's really weird. And Cary Grant's like, what? He's like, that plane's crop dusting over there, but there's no crops. And then it's like smashes you in the head. You're like, oh,
yeah,
that's weird.
Yeah.
and then so he gets on the bus and leaves, and then you see like the bus moves away and the plane's coming straight for him, and you're like, oh damn, it's on.
Yeah. And what that the man at the prairie crossing said. So Roger goes up to him. He's like, "Your name isn't Kaplan, is it?" And the guy's like, "Can't say it is, 'cause it ain't." And like that's a classic like type of line. I've heard that before too. So it's another quote that kind of comes up later in films, I feel.
Right.
And yeah, like that scene, well crafted. And then even just like how he ran into the corn, like you could tell this is just an ad executive.
Yeah.
Like you can feel that from him. Like he's not used to, like he's not a soldier, he's not a ex-CIA or anything like that. Like the way he like flops onto the ground, the way he acted, that was just phenomenal.
Yeah, it's such a fun scene, and the tension that it builds as you're like, is this it? Is this it?
Yeah,
is this gonna happen?
And like, you kind of had this idea. Well, you basically know at this point that Eve was playing him.
Yeah.
But you don't know what's gonna happen at this scene. Yeah.
Yeah, it's such a great scene. So the plane itself was a real plane. However, the plane crash was actually a model truck and a model plane. Like they were large models.
Yeah.
But that's what they used to film that scene.
I feel like they did it well. I wouldn't have known that without looking that up. Yeah.
And that's where I was actually really interested in learning about that scene, because it wasn't like with the boats in Ben-Hur where you could kind of be like, you know, like those are obviously not the real boats, like, and you could kind of tell that. You can
kind of tell, but the waves and everything look so real in that. Yeah. Anyways.
It was close. It just wasn't quite there. Whereas the plane scene, like, I legitimately was like, how did they just film that plane running into that gas tank there with, you know, like, how do you film that without killing somebody?
Yeah.
So it was really interesting the way they did that.
There's a few just things that I like to look at. The house, the Van Damme house, was just such an unreal looking, like, that's obviously like a bad guy's hangout.
You mean the final hangout?
Above Mount Rushmore.
Right. Which was actually not a real house. They just designed that kind of...
Yeah, like it wasn't an actual house. I wished it was, because I was like, I want to go there. I want that house.
Do you think anybody's ever rebuilt that house somewhere? Like some
I hope
person?
so. Someone like Frank Gehry. Like that looked like if you're into architecture, Frank Gehry built some amazing architecture, and like this reminded me of that. Yeah, the fact that it wasn't a real house, it looked so real and so awesome that it had to be like the evil guy's house.
Yeah, I very much agree with that. As a side note, the main henchman, he portrayed evil so well. Like, he just looked like I'm gonna do evil.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I was like, I've seen this guy somewhere, and I haven't. But he's just such a good job at portraying evil that, like, I feel like he's been imitated since.
Yeah, you're talking about the one who, like, actually, like, he was the one in, like, the lighter brown suit, I feel like, throughout the movie.
No, he's like he's Van Damme's
like second guy.
Yeah, that guy.
Yeah. In the final scenes, he did such a good job because I didn't know if he was about to shoot Van Damme.
Yeah.
For real. And that's where like that kind of plot twist.
I thought he did shoot him. I was like, oh my god, like this is quite a twist here.
Yeah, and then they come back at you with, I found Eve's gun full of blanks.
Yeah.
Like he actually like aimed at him and shot him. That scene actually got me.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that scene. He actually, I wasn't going to get into this, but there's also some homoerotic stuff going on with his character as well. He wanted to portray his character as in love with Van Damme.
Yeah.
Whereas Van Damme, like the James Mason was like, no, I'm not. Like my character's not in love with him at all. It's kind of cool that, again, in 1959, another film as famous
where they're
as
exploring that area of
and Hitchcock loved it.
Yeah.
He loved it. He was like, yeah, like the way you're playing this character is great.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk score. I don't have much to add to score on this one. It was Bernard Herrmann who scored this film. He actually scored most of Hitchcock's films, as well as Citizen Kane, The Day the Earth Stood Still, Cape Fear, Taxi Driver, and The Twilight Zone Show. So, pretty prolific.
Yeah, very prolific.
Yeah.
Those are all, like, classics in their own genres.
Exactly. I don't have much to talk about in score other than it's a very atmospheric score, and it really adds to what's happening in the film. It's not something like Jaws that like has that theme.
Yeah.
But
it's not its own character within the film or anything like that. Yeah.
I wouldn't say that. I do add the asterisks in though, where I actually re-listened to it last night and I could distinctly visualize in my mind what was going on during the different points in the score. It does a really good job of tying in what's happening in the film to the music and the tone of the music.
Yeah.
I thought that was really cool that I watched this movie about a week and a half ago and it was my first viewing, so there's obviously scenes that have really stuck with me, but to listen from start to finish to the score and be like, oh yeah, okay, I can picture like Cary Grant being kidnapped. I can picture Cary Grant now on drunk in the car and now he's on the train. Like,
yeah,
it was kind of cool to have that connection while I was listening to it.
Yeah. Know what? To go back to effects and filming, this tiny little thing was so funny. The little razor, the little shaving kit was just such a funny little add-in. So, in the train, Eve has her own apartment, basically compartment with an ensuite, and so that you could stay overnight and be comfortable. And in the bathroom, Roger Thornhill goes in there and he finds like the tiniest little shaving razor and the tiniest little brush, and then he uses them later, and he puts the shaving cream on his face with this little thing, and it disguises him from the police for a little minute. And then he starts, after the police are gone, he starts shaving it off, and he looks to the guy next to him who has a full-size straight razor, and the guy looks at him and he's like, what are you doing? And he's just like, he just shows it to him, and they're both like, wow, like, that's tiny.
Yeah.
Like, it was just such a funny little thing to add in that added so much like of that comedic relief and everything that, yeah, it was just phenomenal.
Yeah. There's so many little details in the film that get called back later.
Yeah.
That's really tight writing, in my opinion.
Yes.
That everything means something to something else, but it also doesn't mean, like, it's not like pulling towards a larger theme. It's just like, different throwbacks to different things happening throughout the film, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, I don't know how early that kind of idea started. I want to say it probably started with Hitchcock, where like the small little detail from earlier has a lot to do. It's just little things. The continuity is just like adds so much to like the comedy and everything that they were going for in this. Yeah.
All right. Are you ready to talk legacy?
Yeah.
Okay. We have to talk Oscars to start because that was the whole theme of the last two movies. North by Northwest is nominated for 3 Oscar awards in 1959. Didn't win a single one.
Well, because of Ben-Hur, basically.
Yeah, so it was nominated for Best Editing, Best Art Direction, and Best Original Screenplay. The first two went to Ben-Hur, so Best Editing and Best Art Direction. I think I can be satisfied with that for both of those. Like, North by Northwest is an amazing film.
They had great editing too.
Yeah, like, and again, this is where we talked last time a little bit. I want to watch 5 years before, 5 years after, and see the movies and if any of them can compare to these two films, because 1959 was a really good year for films, apparently.
Yeah. It's like Muscle Cars in 1969. Like, it was just that was the year for them.
Yeah, exactly. So, Best Original Screenplay, they lost to a movie called Pillow Talk. Is really funny because that, you and I, before deciding on the two films that we chose, we looked at probably almost a dozen films that came out in 1959 that either got a lot of Oscar nods or didn't get Oscar nods.
Or were just like some of the classic actors and actresses of the time.
Exactly.
That we have wanted to watch. Like, yeah.
Pillow Talk wasn't even on our radar,
no.
which is wild. And I don't even, it's not even in like the top 250 films or anything like that. So I don't know anything about it, which is kind of interesting that it won over.
Oh, that's the Oscars for you.
Yeah.
Partially.
I think, and you know what? I think that realistically that this maybe should have won over that. And that's me just saying based on having no knowledge of what Pillow Talk even is. But so we talked about the nominations, but we didn't talk about Cary Grant and not being nominated for Best Actor. So obviously that went to Ben-Hur and Charlton Heston. Yeah. Do you think that you could make a case that Cary Grant's portrayal was more iconic? Because that's what's been bouncing around my mind all week.
You know what? Like, based on what the character was, like the character has been replicated so many more times than I would say Ben-Hur has. Right. Because Ben-Hur wasn't really that much of a character. What are we talking nominated for? Are you saying Best Actor?
Yeah, it was
Best Actor.
It was best or I think it was Best Role or something like that. I can't remember.
Yeah, like it depends on the definition that we're looking at here, because I would say Cary Grant's North by Northwest, Roger Thornhill, is a better character that is long-lasting and referenceable than...
It's just Best Actor.
Yeah.
I think that I could make an argument that Cary Grant, his portrayal was just more entertaining, was more complicated and dynamic than Ben-Hur. Like, so we talked Hugh Griffith in the last one and him playing the Sheik and how electric he was in there.
Yeah.
And I think in terms of Best Supporting Actor, I think hands down he's got it out of any of the supporting actors in those two films.
Very much so.
But I think that just with how I don't know, it's really hard to say because we're comparing apples to oranges here, because Hugh Grant's character is, again, he's like that irritated like ad exec who's taken way out of his comfort zone and just suave but also like
so I would say there's almost like a split between, like, Charlton Heston's character was very old school, whereas...
he's playing a biblical character. Yeah. He's playing... like
no, but I mean old school film. Like, every portrayal was a little bit overacted. Every, like, his sneers were a little too sneery. His love was a little too lovey.
He was, like, as far in, like good character looking for redemption. Like, he was like the nobleman.
Yeah. And it's almost boring to a certain point. Like, he just played the character and he wasn't the character. Whereas Cary Grant was he was so in the role.
Yeah.
Like, nothing takes you out of it. For Cary Grant's role, nothing takes you out of it. And to me, that's a better acting, better character, better portrayal.
Yeah.
With Ben-Hur, a few things did take me out of it, where I'm like he's really trying to act this up. Like, he was acting as if he was acting in the old style, whereas I think Cary Grant was a little ahead in acting in a more genuine way.
Yeah, he was a little bit more authentic to who he was.
Yeah, like maybe just the characters aligned a lot more for him because he was comedic throughout his career overall.
Right.
Like suave and comedic. Like that's kind of his shtick.
Yep.
But yeah, it is apples to oranges there.
Yeah.
Like, could you swap them and it work?
I think so.
I think Cary Grant could go to Ben-Hur, but I don't know if Charlton Heston...
I see what you mean.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Not that that's what makes you get an Oscar, but it's just they're very different when you think about it that way.
You'd almost be looking... I don't know. I almost think that I could see Charlton Heston playing Cary Grant's character here more than I can see Cary Grant playing Ben-Hur, though.
I haven't seen enough to say, like, I think he would overact the funny scenes and he wouldn't be natural at the funny scenes in North by Northwest. Charlton Heston wouldn't
might be right.
fill Cary Grant's shoes. But I think almost any actor could have played Ben-Hur because it's so obvious what Charlton Heston was displaying.
Right.
He was displaying anger and he was displaying hurt and he was displaying love for his country and all those kinds of things especially in his love scenes where he was like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I think Cary Grant did a better job. I think that's where I'm going to lie with that.
I don't disagree with you. I don't think that either opinion could be wrong. Like, Charlton Heston definitely deserves at least
he does.
Yeah.
An Oscar. They both should get an Oscar.
Yeah.
Did Cary Grant get an Oscar overall?
No, he was
not for that year.
Oh, yeah. So Cary Grant won. Oh, I didn't write that down.
No, he only got an Academy honorary reward and a Kennedy Center's honors.
Oh.
He didn't ever get one.
Huh.
Even though he was in 4 Hitchcock films. Mm-hmm. Maybe not the best of the Hitchcock, but like still.
Yeah, that's interesting. So the reason why we did this, the reason why we watched Ben-Hur first, because we knew it won Best Picture. And North by Northwest didn't even get nominated. Do you think that there's a world in which North by Northwest can take Best Picture from Ben-Hur?
No, because it's an enjoyable film. And that's what it comes down to when you're looking at Oscars. And we are in Oscar season, so we're talking about Oscar movies.
Yeah.
This was an Oscar nominee, and Ben-Hur was an Oscar winner. So when you're looking at Oscar films, you're not getting the funniest, most enjoyable, most relatable films. You're getting the technically, like, on paper, best films almost.
Right.
They maybe the most epic, or maybe the most fitting for the decade.
Yeah.
Most fitting for the year.
I also read somewhere once that the Oscars are also almost like an award for your past achievements. Like we didn't nominate you for this because we had to nominate this person for this because we didn't nominate them for that.
It's like, why did Leo take so long to get his Oscar?
Yeah, when every one of his roles is like Oscar worthy.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. So, and I agree with you. I think that Ben-Hur is a more fitting movie for Best Picture. Now, in terms of like audience enjoyment, if you look at the ratings, North by Northwest is the highest rated film from 1959 on IMDb. It comes in at number 97, so it just makes that top 100.
Yeah.
Whereas Ben-Hur is actually 182nd. And Ben-Hur is even lower on that top 250 list than another movie from 1959, Some Like It Hot, which I've heard also really holds up.
Yeah, honestly, I think that makes sense because overall, like, the majority of Oscars, they're respected for what they were, but they're maybe not as enjoyed.
Yeah.
And that's why I think the Oscars mean something and they don't. They have indications towards how great something is, but they don't necessarily say that it will live on.
Oh yeah, or how great the people being nominated for them are.
Yeah.
You almost have to look like when somebody gets nominated for something, what did they do last year? Or what did they do like 2 years ago that led them to getting nominated for this? Because that's probably where you're looking at a good movie.
Yeah, exactly.
So Hitchcock, I wanted to talk really quick about his Oscar track record. He was nominated for Best Director 5 times throughout his career and never once won an Oscar. Yeah, he wasn't even nominated for Best Director for this film, which blows my mind. Like, how can you not be...
It was phenomenally directed. Yeah,
That's a snub in my opinion.
So, yeah, what did it mean? It's all politics, I think. And that's where I think a lot of what I've seen about the Oscars comes down to is politics. Mm-hmm. Who deserves it, who's paying, who's influencing who to give what. The Oscars are a little of it's kind of a wild card in itself, because let's say you watch every phenomenal movie for any given year. Mm-hmm. You're going to find like a top 10, and each of those could be like you probably have your top pick.
Yeah.
And it's not in the running because the other ones had better people financing them, maybe, or the directors earned it through years of service to the industry, or
the group of people nominating them have a certain taste that doesn't quite align with that.
Yeah, and like the politics of the year.
Yeah.
Like, let's say it was like the 2018 or whenever Me Too came out. That would influence what was in the Oscar picks.
Yeah. So the only other Oscar comment that I wanted to make was that the screenplay writer Ernest Lehman was nominated 6 times throughout his career for Best Screenplay and also never won throughout that. And we already talked about what his movies were that he made. But he was the first screenwriter ever to receive an honorary Oscar in 2001. So they did kind of recognize him eventually, which is good.
Yeah. Was he still alive during it? Or was it posthumous?
I think he was still alive during it. I'm pretty sure I read. I think he died in 2003. Nice. I don't know if I'm remembering that correctly at all. Fair. But so let's talk the influence here. So we've already talked about this a little bit, but this movie influences this whole spy genre for the rest of time. Period. Like, James Bond was directly influenced by this. The books had already come out by this time.
Yeah.
But Ian Fleming was so inspired by the way that this film was created. He wanted Hugh Grant as his first James Bond.
Do you mean Cary Grant?
Sorry, Cary Grant. Damn it. Did it again.
Yeah.
I don't know why I have Hugh Grant on my mind.
House.
But yeah, so... But all other films and TV shows in this genre, because like you said, we also talked about The Man from U.N.C.L.E. already. We've talked about, what was the other one?
Get Smart.
Yeah. Yeah, so obviously there's some roots there. It's been spoofed, like, countless times. Yeah. Oh, actually, times that it's been referenced. So, noted IMDb, it's been referenced 295 times since in other films and TV shows.
Yeah.
That's
like
wild.
You've seen this in almost everything. There's quotes that I'll probably get into. We have a few quotes that we want to talk about that are ripped off and reused and reimagined. Scenes that are reimagined. Everything is reimagined from this because it's so iconic.
Or reference, spoofs. So, one of my favorite movies of all time, and I think we might do it next, The Big Lebowski. And every time I talk about The Big Lebowski, I'm like, I want to watch The Big Lebowski now.
Yeah.
So I think we might have to do this as our next film. But The Big Lebowski is also a film that is very much inspired by this, because we have mistaken identity at the core of the film.
Of course, yeah.
But this is the point. We talked about this a little earlier, that there was one scene in particular that as soon as it happened, I was like, oh, The Big Lebowski did that. And then later on, it kind of sat in my mind, and I was like, oh, it's because The Big Lebowski obviously ripped this off.
Yeah.
So the scene where Cary Grant is trying to figure out the message that Eve has written and draws the pencil over.
Yeah.
So in The Big Lebowski, the dude does the same thing where he sees the pad of paper and he does the scribble over it, and it's just a big penis that somebody has scribbled on there.
Oh, that's phenomenal.
Yeah. You don't remember?
Yes, I remember it.
It's like, oh.
Yeah. Like, like he looked like he was writing down something that would help the dude figure out what's going on, but it was just a dick. Oh, no way. I didn't think about that, because we've seen that. Everybody's seen that thing where like someone writes something down on a pad of paper, they go over it with a pencil, and then they can read what was left. That's a hilarious iteration of that started from North by Northwest.
Yeah,
that's cool.
Exactly. So
yeah.
Lots of inspiration there. Other kind of references. I don't know if you ever watched the Richie Rich movie, the live action with Macaulay Culkin. It was on Family Channel, but that ends with a chase on Mount Rushmore as well.
I wouldn't have remembered that, but I can kind of envision it. There has been I've seen like mostly like cartoon things. I feel like the Family Guy or the Simpsons has done it for sure.
Yep.
They've referenced the plane
Simpsons
scene.
Definitely.
Yeah, like there's so many things that reference North by Northwest. Anytime a character gets on a train, it's a North by Northwest reference if it's comedic. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, like this movie just hits hooks in so much of our culture even today.
Yeah. I don't know. It's good.
Yeah.
I'm losing it.
All right, let's get into our personal reviews. I think at this point, if you don't know where we sit on this, I don't know what to tell you. I loved this movie. It's the suspense is so good. Cary Grant's portrayal is so good.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorite portrayals in film. Maybe this doesn't quite make my top 20 movies of all time, but for portrayals, it's up there.
Yeah. Throughout me watching it, I was like, Cary Grant is how I imagine myself every day. And
I feel like most people could put themselves in Cary Grant's shoes.
And then like I imagine like my girlfriend Annabelle as Eve. Like we're both like that's how I like picture us in our heads. So like that really connected for me just throughout this movie. And I know I'm not nearly as funny, but I like to think I am. So that's
like you said, not nearly as funny, but you left out the part about being suave.
Oh well, I'm obviously as suave. I could put the lines on anyone, but anyways,
I like to draw on pads of paper.
Yeah, I've seen you do it. You're doing it right now.
Ooh.
That was my suave.
That was okay.
Draw on my pad of paper. All right, let's stop
awful. There. That's the daddest of jokes on this podcast yet.
And that's where I imagine it in my head that I'm Cary Grant, but it doesn't come off that way. My whole life in my head is this movie.
Yeah.
But it doesn't come off that way to everyone watching.
That's so true. Yeah. I feel like most people go through life like that.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe that's Hitchcock's theme.
Ooh. Pacing of the film is great. It's just so well done. What's really interesting is all like very, very little was left on the cutting room floor.
Yeah.
Almost the entirety of what they filmed, what they wanted to film, made it into the movie. The studio wanted him to cut about 20 minutes or so off the film to get it just under the 2 hour mark, and he was like,
he's like, I'm Alfred Hitchcock.
Yeah.
What are you going to do about it?
He had his guy go back and read the contract, and it said that he had complete artistic freedom, and he was like, nah, we're not doing that.
Yeah. Nice.
So that's really great. Partner factor, Jess loved this movie. This is the most I've seen her invested in a film that we have watched for this podcast yet, and that's saying something.
Yeah. I would honestly say this is probably one of the most easily watchable of anything that we've reviewed so far.
Yeah.
And the most enjoyable for that Friday night movie, which most people are in the vibe for, especially these days. That's kind of what we need.
Yeah.
And so my partner factor, Annabelle had previously watched this, and this is where I think the debate is for the pacing. It's just, but at the same time, I want to argue against her because she doesn't like old movies for their pacing. So basically, for an old movie, I think this had great pacing.
Yeah.
For a new movie, it doesn't. For someone who's used to watching modern movies, it's not the best pacing.
There's
just
some
because
parts in like the first 40 minutes. I would say like maybe 20 minutes into like around the 50-minute mark. 55-minute mark. I could see you maybe making an argument for a little bit of awkward pacing.
Yeah, just in the middle. The ending is phenomenal. I love how they ended this movie.
It was a weird cut. I don't know if I
liked
that
it.
or not.
I
You
liked
did?
it. Yeah, like that made the whole thing like end on such a nice note for me because that's exactly how I imagine like me. Like that's something I would do.
Riding off into the sunset.
Yeah. So just in case anyone hasn't watched it at this point, the very end scene is they're running across and like climbing down Mount Rushmore, climbing down the faces of the presidents and everything. And then Eve is like about to fall off the cliff.
Right.
And Roger like is holding on and he's like, just hold on a little bit longer and like try and like grab, like come up.
Yeah.
And like he's like trying to pull her up. And then as she's like reaching up and finally getting back onto solid ground, it cuts to what they just referenced like a few minutes before about how if they escape this whole crazy scenario, they want to go back on the train and ride across the country together and just really enjoy their time.
Right.
And so it cuts from her about to fall off the cliff to her pretending that she's on the cliff still, but she's on the bed of the train and he's pulling her up. And she's like, I don't know why you wanted to do this again. He's like, I just like I just like remembering that whole scenario.
Yeah.
And it's just like, it goes like, that was just such a nice little ending for me. Like I left the movie smiling my ass off.
Yeah. And I agree with that. And I enjoyed the ending too. But for me personally, the way it was cut, I wasn't the biggest fan of. It was too, I don't know. It was, yeah.
Like, yeah, that's a sign of the times and like technology potentially.
Yeah.
Is that what you're thinking?
I don't know. It was just cut a little awkwardly, in my opinion. I'm just a guy talking in front of a mic.
Yeah.
But for me, it just felt a little like awkward.
I see that, but like after it happened, I was like, you know what? That was awesome.
Yeah, and it was great. It was very original.
Yeah.
As a side note, I thought she was gonna fall. For whatever in my head, I was like, I think she's dead.
Yeah. Because he kept losing her. Like he lost her to Van Damme as he saw it.
And she's wearing the glove too. And I thought she was gonna slip out of that or something. Yeah. There's no way they could have ended the movie like that.
This is another point because Hitchcock goes to pretty extreme brutality.
He just
lengths in his movies overall.
He just doesn't care about his actors.
Yes.
Not to the same extent of Stanley Kubrick. Kubrick terrorized his actors.
Yeah, but what I want to say is that like in his films there was a lot of like gruesome acts and stuff like that.
Oh, okay, I see what you mean.
We were kind of expecting that from somewhere in this. We see a little hint of it with the UN guy getting a knife in his back.
Right.
But like everyone going into the movies watching this was like, this is a Hitchcock film. Something fucked up is about to happen at any moment. He was like known for that.
He kind of subverted the expectations.
Yes. To take a modern reference and apply it backwards. So that's funny. Yeah. But the fact that he waited like almost until the end for like someone to die was pretty unexpected. Like you were expecting a lot more things to happen in that path, and that's where he like built suspense up till that point, but it wasn't a central theme, which was different for him. Right.
Maybe it's because I've watched Indiana Jones a few too many times, and I've watched Elsa fall a few too many times in the third movie.
Yeah.
That I just had in my mind. I was like, she's dead.
Yeah. I wasn't sure either, like, as I was watching, but, like, I kind of felt confident that they were about to win.
Yeah.
Overall, I think we said most of the things about this movie that I enjoyed, and, like, I've been pretty forthright about that. Just how much I really liked Cary Grant's portrayal of Roger Thornhill. He was hilarious. And like subtly hilarious without like the character wasn't trying to be hilarious.
Yeah.
He was just being himself, being like this like smart ass.
Yeah.
And constantly like it was just that was his character and it was phenomenal.
Well, and it sounds like you're a big fan of Eva Marie Saint's portrayal as well.
Yeah, like those two combined on stage was phenomenal. I guess that's my favorite word tonight, phenomenal. But
I have a word usually of the night too, and I'm sure I'm going to listen to it for 6 hours while I edit it.
Yeah.
Let's talk quotes. And for once, I have a quote that I am so excited to share because it's so good. It's one of my favorite quotes. It's my favorite quote from the movie, but it's one of my favorite quotes of film. And I'm just reading it again. Roger Thornhill, he says, "Now you listen to me. I'm an advertising man, not a red herring. I've got a job, a secretary, a mother, 2 ex-wives, and several bartenders that depend upon me, and I don't intend to disappoint all of them by getting myself slightly killed."
Yes. And that is like the line that I knew before knowing where it was from. Mm-hmm. I've heard this line before, just as like in reference and everything. And that line, as it played, because I wasn't expecting it, I didn't know it was in this movie.
Yeah.
It hit, and I was like, oh my God, yes! Like, that was just such a good line.
Yeah.
The whole, if you left it without the several bartenders, it wouldn't have landed.
No,
the several bartenders
part,
was just phenomenal.
Yeah.
Like, there's several bartenders that depend on him. Like, amazing.
Yeah.
I like, if that was Lehman who wrote that, like, he deserves the Oscar just for that.
Yeah, I agree. It's such a great line. It's such a great line.
Yeah. You know what my other favorite line was?
What's that?
It's basically a whole scene. Roger Thornhill is escaping. He escapes out a window in a hospital after he has been shot, with air quotes, with the blank. So he escapes out his window. His door is locked. He escapes out the window and goes into the next window of this hospital. And there's a lady in a hospital bed there. And he comes in the window and she's like, "Stop!" And she's like freaked out. Someone's coming in her window.
Yeah.
And then he's like, "Oh, excuse me." And he starts moving towards the door again. And then she puts on her glasses and then sees him. Like, he's an attractive guy, and that's referenced throughout the film.
Yeah.
And so first she's like, "Stop," and then she's like, "Stop." And like, and then he pauses and he's like, "No." like he's like, "I've already been through this. Like, I've done enough for a blonde girl already. Like, I've been roped into this whole situation just for a blonde girl right now." Like, that was such a funny scene.
Yeah.
It was tiny, but it was so characteristic and so perfect.
The look back where he's like, "No."
Yeah. He's like, "Oh no!" like if it was any other situation, and he just came in this lady's window, and she was as attractive as she was, and he was as attractive as he was, he'd be like all over it, because that's almost like the speed within which he fell in love with Eve earlier. But then, they just kind of recreate that just to like be like, "Oh man, that was perfect. That is good writing."
Yeah, I agree. I'm still laughing about it.
Yeah.
Oh man.
And then just all the little lines, like when Roger gets to the police station and he's on the phone with his mom.
Yeah.
And he's just talking to her. It's one-sided. We only hear a little bit. And he's like, no, mother, I haven't been drinking. No, these 2 men, they poured a whole bottle of bourbon into me. No, they didn't give me a chaser. Like, that's what she asked.
Yeah.
Like, did they at least give you a chaser? Like, like, that was just all those perfectly timed things to make you, like, just the perfect timing of the comedy.
Yeah. Or I like when he gives her his card and it says like ROT, and she's like, "What does the O stand for?" And he's like, "Nothing. I just like it looked cool."
Yeah. And like when they're climbing down the Rushmore, and he's like, I don't like the way Teddy Roosevelt's looking at me.
Yeah. Yeah, just even in like the face of that much danger, just cracking wise.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of great lines, and I really hope that as a viewer, if you aren't convinced at this point to watch it, go check it out, because you're gonna have a riot.
Yeah, seriously.
Best scenes for me, like the plane sequence is obviously like top tier. Most of the train is a lot of fun too.
Yeah, the train is very fun. His just him driving while drunk,
the drunk driving,
and then
great.
at the police station.
I really enjoyed when they went back to the house, and you're just like, what is going on right now? Like, and you're just so confused because you're like, what is happening? Like this is all like such a great cover up.
Yeah, and the way that like he brought his mother with him.
Yeah.
And like he's
and she's not believable at all. She's like, you're an idiot.
Yeah.
You're an idiot.
And then so when they go to this George Kaplan's hotel for the first time, and he brings his mom, and they go up to his room, and then they get a phone call that says that some guys are coming up or whatever, and he knows that it's the two guys who are trying to kill him. Then they all get in the elevator together, and they're going down, and his mom is like, you two aren't really trying to kill my son, are you?
Yeah.
And then like they are, but then someone starts laughing because it was
like
those
guys that started laughing.
Yeah,
to break the tension.
And then everybody else in the elevator started laughing, and like that was just like such a classic moment of like an elevator joke.
Yeah.
Like something to say in the elevator that's just hilarious. I bet people were quoting that for years in elevators after that, after this movie came out.
Yeah.
Like at least a decade.
Yeah. How great was it with how hungover he looked in court? That was just like a minor detail, but I was like, that man is having a rough morning.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a good scene. Even just like when Van Damme brought him into the library room, or his bodyguard brought him into the library room, you just see how snappy he is, how quick this character is with his like fast, funny lines. Mm-hmm. They bring him into the library, and he's just like, don't worry, I'll catch up on my reading. And it just like hits perfectly. It's just so quick. Like he barely has time to see that he's in a library, and he's already making a joke. Like it's just so quick.
Right.
Like
yeah.
Let's talk really quick about Eve's role and how great it is with the constant twists of who she really is. Because we get this first, she's instantly like attracted to Cary Grant, and that's and you're kind of suspicious of that a little bit, because at this point he's an internationally wanted man. Like everybody knows his face worldwide at this point. He's killed a UN ambassador in the UN building, and at this point everybody knows his face. Obviously she knows his face probably at this point too.
And as soon as they meet on the train, he's obviously evading the cops, and she helps him hide in a room, like in the bathroom or whatever. And then she says he went that way, and then he comes back out, and he's like, 7 parking tickets. Yeah, and it was just like such a funny scene. And then she references that later as like, obviously it wasn't 7 parking tickets.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So we've got this character, and she's kind of suspicious, right? Or I'm suspicious of her a little bit, because you don't see that happen. And then she's like, really coming on to him in the...
It's almost too perfect.
Yeah, it's too perfect. So there's something off there. And then we realize that she's actually an agent for the bad guys. But she's actually a double agent for the good guys. And so there's this constant like change, because every time you think you know who she is, like, so she does something where you're like, like that doesn't feel in character. Like when she's basically telling him to leave and never come back, you're like, that's strange.
Yeah, because she also gets heavily involved emotionally with him.
Yeah.
So that's like a trifecta for her. She's got the good guys, Americans, the bad guys, and then Thornhill. So that combination, like, she's being pulled 3 different ways, and she's still calm under pressure for the most part.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Like, yeah.
I don't have too much else to discuss, so.
I thought it was so hot when she blew out his match. Like she lit up a cigarette and blew out his match, and I was like, oh,
That's just because
that's a woman after my heart.
That's just because you're a smoker.
Yeah. Oh, another great line. So after their dinner in the train, they go back to her compartment area.
Yep.
And he hides up in the luggage compartment, and the cops come in, and he's hiding up there, and she's trying to read her book to pretend. And he's like, "Have you got any olive oil?" And she's like, "Olive oil?" And he's like, "Well, I'd like to be packed in olive oil if I'm going to be a sardine." And like just that line hits so well.
Yeah, just his general displeasure. And that's, again, another scene where it comes out in a very comedic way that's just so enjoyable to watch.
Yeah. I thought I caught on that he was going to fake his death in front of Van Damme, but like it was obvious. It was leading up to that.
Well, yeah, I wasn't shocked by it by any means.
No,
but
yeah.
It was really well done though still. Because you saw in the background her talking to the professor too.
Yeah.
Which was really interesting.
Yeah. Then another scene that is legacy-ish. Roger Thornhill is holding on to the cliff, and the bad guy henchman comes up and steps on his hand.
Yep.
That must have been the very first iteration of the Lion King.
Yeah.
Because that is the Lion King move. That's like Scar's move.
Yeah, 100%.
Everyone our age knows that move.
That's a great connection that I didn't notice. But yeah, when that happened, I was like, "Ooh, that's a dick move. That's a real bad guy level move."
Yeah. And just overall, I think like I have to see more Hitchcock movies, but from everything that I've read, I would say the consensus kind of is this isn't the best Hitchcock movie, but it is a favorite.
I could agree with that. I bet you it's something like Stephen King and The Stand, where Stephen King and The Stand are just so good. They're so like iconically Stephen King, but they're not necessarily everybody's favorites.
Yeah. This is the most digestible, most enjoyable of the Hitchcock films.
Yeah, I agree. I'm really excited to see the rest of them because, especially after watching two of them now and starting to understand what made Hitchcock so great as a director, I'm really looking forward to seeing those other very well directed films.
Yeah.
I don't really have too much else to add. Like, I think we've discussed all of the great spots. Like, this is such a good movie that you got to see it for yourself. And I'm glad that I finally have watched it because it's probably a movie that it's been in my peripherals for a really long time.
Yeah, and all the references, like I knew so much about this movie before I started watching it, and then I started watching it, and I started pulling all this information that I had previously seen about it, and I'm like, oh, this is the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was very enjoyable to watch.
Yeah. So, okay, so I think it's a good time to wrap it up. Do we want to clamp down on The Big Lebowski as our next movie, or should we leave it open?
I'd say leave it open.
Regardless of whether or not we do The Big Lebowski, I'm probably going to watch The Big Lebowski soon.
That's fair.
So, okay, well, let's leave it open then. We'll figure something out. I think we are going to do comedy, though, next. I think, even though this one had, like, a good lightheartedness to it, Cary Grant, phenomenal, but I think I still want to head out of Oscar season with something.
Yeah, a pure comedy.
Yeah. We'll find something good, I'm sure. Anyway, I think that's it for this week's. We're sorry that we're a little late. Sometimes life happens, but I think we'll put out this one, and then we'll put out one a week later so that we're back on our regular schedule time.
For all of you listening.
So on a positive note, you get one within a week of another.
Yeah,
so
yeah,
you're welcome, but also sorry.
Tune in.
All right, have a good one, everyone.
See you next time.